Hello and welcome to this reaction video. Today I'm going to be reacting to Inflation by Last Week Tonight. Hopefully you'll join me. So yeah, this was a video I came across and I was like, this is a bit, I don't know. And yeah, it might be a little bit more critical than, some of the Last Week Tonight videos I usually make because it was interesting. But let's go ahead and let's watch the video right about now. Okay.
We're going to dive straight in with our main story this week, as it concerns a topic that's been at the forefront of the news over the past year.
Tonight, Inflation Nation.
Yeah.
Inflation's grip on American consumers not letting up.
It's called lunchflation, boozeflation,
Milkflation.
Meatflation is rocking the nation.
Okay, first, a big enthusiastic nope to the word meatflation.
Yeah.
Which sounds less like an economic phenomenon and more like a slang term for a boner.
God Almighty, that's disgusting. That's disgusting.
Pleasant portmanteau than meatflation, aside from maybe snart, which combines the words sneeze and fart, or Ronzo, which would arguably be the celebrity couple name if Ron Howard ever fucked Gonzo the Muppet.
Oh, God.
As you undoubtedly know, the US is experiencing the highest inflation of the past 40 years. And
Not as bad as
despite
other countries, but
that it would be temporary, prices are still going up. Over the past year, food is up 10.4%, electricity is up 13.7%, and gasoline is up 59.9%. So
Yeah.
it's probably a good idea to start making your gasoline at home in the morning instead of getting an expensive cup of it on your way to work. And in some cases, companies have tried to hide inflation by keeping their prices the same, but reducing the size of
Shrinkflation.
their products. It's called shrinkflation.
Yeah, it is.
And news outlets love to cover this, usually with the help of what seems to be the one go-to expert on the topic.
There's almost no category of product except eggs, maybe, that hasn't been downsized over the past years.
Well,
Consumer advocate Ed Dworsky is publisher of Mouseprint.com.
I mean, you can actually, whatchamacallit, just restructure your definition of large, small, and medium in the egg market. You can just be like, well, no, I know I know we call that large eggs before, but now the small eggs are large eggs, and the mini eggs are medium eggs now. Yeah, we have no more small eggs, but I guess we just encourage the chickens to, like, the thing is, right, hens they don't really tend to lay eggs based off of, like you can get a big egg from a hen or, like, a small egg from it. There's no, the eggs kind of come in afterward, then you label them. So, realistically, there's no real reason why you actually would sell bigger eggs for more, because that's just supply and demand, really. It's not actually what you put in, because a hen might lay a small egg, even it doesn't really matter how much more food you give them. They're not going to suddenly start laying bigger eggs. So, at the end of the day, you could argue, well, why are the prices different anyway? Because they're the same input, same amount of work. Maybe it costs us slightly more in fuel because of the slightly increased weight. I don't know. Less eggs you can bring. I don't know. Who the hell knows? Okay, I don't know what.
Crest 3D white went from 4.1 ounces to 3.8 ounces.
Jesus,
Apple Cinnamon Cheerios went from 20.1 ounces to 19 ounces. It's still called family size. The family must have gotten smaller.
Jesus Christ, that's dark. That's fucking dark. Cause what do you mean by that? It's like
2 months. This one is the old 32-ounce one. This one is 4 ounces less. They said they made it easier to grip. Give me a break.
Yeah! You tell him, Ed! I love everything about that man from his website, mouseprint.org, which is somehow not an online literary journal for writers who happen to be rodents, to his electrifying delivery of the word eggs, to his utter refusal to tolerate even the slightest amount of bullshit from Gatorade. But whether it's inflation, shrinkflation, or meatflation, rising prices are clearly a problem. Although hourly earnings were up 5.1% over the past year, overall wages fell by
Yeah.
2.6% when adjusted for inflation.
Yeah.
And all those on fixed
Because
incomes
this is the thing, and this is always the problem with inflation, which is that there's people going, oh yeah, no, yeah, no, we'll give you a wage increase of 2%. Ignore the fact that inflation is at 9. Yeah, and also our prices have gone up, so actually our profits have gone up, and even so is our revenue. Like, even for companies that, like, I know companies, right, their profits haven't gone up, right, because they said, you know what, no, we won't do the shitty thing where we'll increase profits, but their revenue went up because they had to put up their prices. The only companies that didn't see an increase in revenue were companies that didn't put up their prices, you know, even if they had increased costs. Now, some companies obviously didn't have increased costs, and some companies still don't have increased costs. You know, you do have companies that basically control the entire market. Like, for example, Amazon controls basically most of the market, and that they're involved in, so they control production and everything like that. So, realistically, if you're buying something from Amazon directly, there shouldn't be an increase in price because, well, they own everything. So, you know, it's like they Twitch complaining, oh, increased server costs. You're owned by a server company. You just charge. That seems like fraud. You're charging yourself more money. It's like, yeah, we can't keep up with the money I'm charging myself. Yeah,
budgets.
What? Sorry. Oh, that's like bankrupting your parents or like your siblings. Just like, yeah, you know all those payments you've been making to me? Yeah, you're gonna have to pay me that more. It's like, I can't pay anymore. Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to take your house now. What the fuck? We're siblings. You know, it's like, you know, it's like it's just evil. But you know, that's the way of things.
And retirees, inflation is especially difficult to handle and can amount to a life overhaul.
Patty Byther just unretired and got ready for her new part-time job.
I thought I was done. I had worked it all out financially that, you know, I could afford it.
With prices soaring, her retirement lasted 10 months.
My fuel bills.
In 13 months, it went up $150.
Correct. My safety net is just gone.
When do you see yourself retiring for real?
I don't really see a time when I'll be able to retire again.
Yeah.
Or entirely again, which is sort of annoying and sad.
Yeah, that is putting it lightly. It must be so frustrating to retire, think you're done, and then have to go back to work. That is the absolute worst case scenario of retirement, other than, of course, moving to Florida. So,
Yeah.
given that it is hurting so many people right now, tonight, let's examine inflation. What caused it, what we've done to address it so far,
what caused
and
it?
could happen
This
next.
is where it
Let's
gets a bit.
start with how exactly we got here, because you've probably heard a lot of explanations flying around.
This is Bidenflation, a 39-year high
Oh my
created by
gosh.
Joe Biden.
Make no mistake, inflation is large.
You know, gonna be the days when right-wing media would just ignore something if it was, you know, if it was like a certain person they agreed with fault. You know, like if it was some like politician, they were just like, no, we're just not gonna talk about inflation yet. It's just gonna be like just focus on the stories, but not really discuss what the problem is or how to fix it. Or maybe just like some soft ways to fix it. Like, did you know that if you do this, like I for fuck's sake, yeah, that's not gonna work. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, like discussing issues, how to fix it in the same sense that, you know, not real ways to fix it. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. Like, if that was the case, that's what all right wing media do. Well, not all of it, but like, you know, like soft right wing media. Now even the television networks, like, no, it's the person's fault that we don't like. That is also right wing. Okay, so yeah, it's just the person that isn't right wing enough. Okay, that's concerning. It's one thing to like attack someone who's a socialist, to be like, yeah, it's your fault because we're right wing, so we don't agree with you. But it's another to be like, yeah, we are right wing. Oh, so are you. Just not the same guy. You're just not Trump. Okay, well,
largely the fault of Putin.
The supply chain is the catalyst at the end of the day.
Inflation is not caused by the Build Back Better or the bipartisan bill. It's caused by corporate greed.
Yeah, there has been a
Kind of
flurry
true.
of finger-pointing, with many tending to place the blame on whatever they were already mad at, with some Democrats blaming...
Here's where John makes a bit of a mistake.
corporate greed, Republicans blaming Joe Biden, Biden blaming Putin, and your dog presumably blaming...
No, but the thing is, right, is that you can't, you know the kind of argument, it's a lot of people's fault. It's like, yeah, but the thing is, right, if I announce a policy, and I'm a government official that says there are free knives for everyone, and someone stabs someone with a free knife, yes, it's technically my fault that that person got a hold of a knife, but you can't just blame me and be like, it's fine now. No, that person at the end of the day did do the stabbing. You know, there are obviously factors involved, but you can't just go, oh no, then there's multiple factors. No, but there are some people that could have not done that. You know, I could have not decided to have a policy that says free knives for everyone. That person could have just not stabbed someone. Although, technically speaking, not in all cases, you know. Now, go on.
The vacuum cleaner. And here is the interesting thing. Aside from the dog, they're probably all at least a little bit right. Because the truth is, there is no one cause of inflation. At the best
Yeah,
of
but
times,
once again, John, you're missing the point. It's not there's one cause of inflation. It's that once again, that person who announces free knives for everyone, you can't blame them entirely for the stabbing. You can't just go, oh, it's loads of people. We don't need to put that person in prison for stabbing that person to death. That's fine. No, that person will still end up going in prison because at the end of the day, they did stab that person. It doesn't matter if someone helped them get a knife. The intent was there to stab them. That person just gave them the opportunity. Okay? The free knife was just the opportunity to get that knife. So now they went through with their aim. That at the end of the day is the point. If you're saying, oh, you can't blame corporate greed, well, why exactly why were the corporations able to pass that greed on? Because of Putin. Yes, but Putin didn't go ahead and tell those corporations to raise prices, although sometimes you could argue he did raise the prices of some fuel, so you know. But of course, then what the other companies do? They rose their prices for their fuel. What the point at the end of the day is that inherently you can't be like, oh, it's your fault. It's more like it's like blaming the people who killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand for the entire war. It's like, yes, technically speaking, but it's Austro-Hungary that actually started a war. You know. Sure, they may not have intended of starting World War I, but they did start a war. They were the ones who started a war, you know? So if you want to blame someone, blame someone, not have a root cause, but blame someone. You would blame the Austro-Hungarians. That's the point. In history, we don't discuss, oh, this is the blame game. No, we discuss what was the root cause. If you change that, what would stop that kind of thing? What was the domino effect? But at the end of the day, there was a domino effect, and then there's a choice, and the choice does come down to certain people. You know.
Multitude of factors, and the situation that we're in right now has been an unprecedented perfect storm.
Oh, really?
To understand that
it's kind of
storm,
obvious.
It actually help to pause for a moment to talk about the mechanics of inflation. Very basically, it happens whenever there is too much demand.
No offense, but capitalism is always going to lead to this because that's what greed does. So yeah.
For too little supply. If people have lots of
which
money
is not factual because you can artificially create a lack of supply. There is I'm not sure if this may still be the thing, but there's like a stockpile of like a lot of things in a lot of different places. And what they are doing is basically saying, okay, we'll buy it at a lower. It's basically the idea of like stock trading, but it's a little bit more like actually accurate. You know, it's a little bit safer because like a stock can collapse unless you're dealing with like non-volatile stocks. It can collapse. You know, a business can collapse. All these sort of things. you know, there are certain businesses that won't collapse, but at the end of the day, those businesses oftentimes are not very good like ideas to invest in because they can really only fall in value. They're not really going to increase in value because they've reached basically a stock high, effectively. So you can't really sit on them. Like you can trade on them in the short term, sell it when it goes up, that sort of thing. But it's not really going to be like, oh, I'll get this, and then in my retirement it'll be worth a lot more. Not really, no. In my retirement it'll probably be worth the same amount, or a little bit more maybe. Possibly a little bit less. You know what I mean? Basically, you know, but the volatile stocks, and I think that, anyway, basically down to it, is that sometimes people trade in physical goods. So they'll stockpile a bunch of physical goods, which of course will drain supply. They won't sell them at that time. Then they'll wait for the price to shoot up because of the drain of supply. Then they'll sell them, you know, when there's economic collapse and their people want them, you know, that's the thing. So anyway.
Spend, they usually want to buy more stuff, but if there is not enough stuff to go around, then the price of that stuff goes up. I'll give you an example. Let's say that every single person in America suddenly wins the lottery, and everyone now has $40 million to spend. What are they going to do? Well, I would assume that they do what I would, which is immediately buy this $1,500 emerald patina fountain statue of a frog spreading its unnaturally long legs in a manner that seems offensive, but I'm not exactly sure to who. Now, by the way, the frog comes in two sizes, large and giant. Now, obviously, if you win the lottery, you are springing for the giant one, but here is the problem. There are currently only 3 of them left in stock, so the statues are likely to get more expensive because everyone...
Except the thing is that you miss, that inflation is caused by more than just that, because let's say someone says, you know what, I've decided, I'm just gonna, cut the stock. You want Frog statue? Fine. Yeah, there's 3 left in stock. There was 600 million, but I've taken them off the shelves. So looks like there's a bidding war in our hands, eh?
One spawn, as they all have more money to spend, but there are only 3 left. Basically, high demand, not enough supply, and that's how we get frogflation. So, too much money chasing a limited supply of goods.
Except the issue is, and this always happens, this misunderstanding of inflation, which is consumers do not have enough money. But they're always going to be squeezed because at the end of the day, people are always going to be looking to live. And it's this issue, like let's say, right, let's say you're a YouTuber and you want to like make a living out of it. So you place, you know, affiliate links in the description. You have a Patreon, you have a merch store. By the way, I do have a merch store on a Patreon. And you've got all these things, right? And yeah, they're not generating much money, but collectively, you've got ads and you get a few sponsors here and there, and yeah, finally, you can make some money. And then you become popular, and you're starting to make a lot of money off your merch store, and you're starting to make a lot of money off your Patreon and your YouTube memberships. And oh, look at that! Then you go, maybe you have a donation stream. Okay, then now you have a lot of donations coming in. Okay, that's quite a lot of money you're dealing there. You're sucking from your fans. Maybe stop. Oh no, don't stop. So these things are helpful at the start, but the greed, unfortunately, and inherently is this sort of thing where it's like, oh, I need to put up the price. I need to put up the price. Problem is, you can't ever. The price never drops, though. You know, you never want to drop the price. So it's always this sort of thing of like increase the price. So this is the problem. And my argument to John here is, first of all, you can create artificial supply, an artificial demand. Very easily, very easily, and sometimes very cheaply as well. Not always though. But inherently the thing is though that when you look down at it, you go, okay, but hold on a second, John. The thing is that that's not what happened here.
Can lead to inflation, and some on the right have seized on the too much money part of that idea to suggest that inflation is really just down to one thing.
When you put $6 trillion of fiscal stimulus into the economy, as President Biden and Democrats did last year,
you're going to end up with big-time inflation.
The March stimulus package literally manufactured inflation.
This inflation is
Funny, isn't it? Would you look at that? Wait, all of those countries that didn't do that also have inflation. And a lot of them are worse. Wow. I wonder why that might be. Maybe it's because, when you have more money, the problem you see with inflation is that then people don't have the money, so they can't buy the product. That means that the product kind of begins to lose its profits. So then, people go, okay, so people aren't able to buy as much as of this, or maybe they're not buying it at all. Okay, so let's increase the price further to ensure we've got greater profits. Because we want to make sure that we have our profits, and maybe an increase. So we'll put the price even further. But then even more people have to fall out. And the product falls even more. Okay, so we'll buy a bit more. Okay, we'll put the price even more, okay? Okay, now even more people, and it consistently goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And the price keeps going up because people keep falling out because they can't afford to pay the price. Now, of course, the problem is that the more people keep falling out, the more the price goes up. And the price keeps going up, the more people fall out. It's a continuous cycle. So the price keeps going up. And of course, you always need someone to say, stop now. And that's why having more money will not lead to an inflation necessarily. Because actually, having more money will actually generally lead to, Also, having more money only really works as an inflationary thing. If someone else is like, oh, you've got more money, that means I can charge you more. So, once again, kind of is greed.
caused by Democrat policies. Didn't just happen. This is the Democrat tax on the middle class.
Wow, that is some pretty heavy fire there. Calling something
tax. It's going to the rich, you fucking idiot, not the government. So don't tell that we a tax.
A tax on the middle class is one of the best ways to make it look bad, just after calling it a close associate of Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
Blending Biden's stimulus
Sex
package
offender.
has become a common refrain on the right when discussing inflation. And the reality is, there is a kernel of truth to it.
Not really.
Thanks to the pandemic-era stimulus bills, people did have more cash on hand. But that is not the only reason. As strange as it sounds, many people saved money during the early days of the pandemic simply because we were all stuck at home.
Yeah.
By one estimate, households actually accumulated...
Because you don't need to spend money on fuel. You don't need to spend money on getting to work. You don't need to spend money on, you know, having to eat out because you don't have anywhere like your place of living or your place of consumption of food that you can make is not in the current location. Now you are able to make food cheaper. You don't have to go to work. Things are far cheaper. Maybe any like technology you had to purchase, you didn't have to purchase yourself. Maybe your business owns it, or your employer owns it. You know, like many businesses did that. Like I know people who they were given computers, but of course they don't own the computers, which is a bit of a pain because they can't really use them for anything but work. But still, it didn't mean they didn't have to go out and buy expensive computers. Other people did, but you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. It's sort of just like you do save a bit. Of course, that doesn't mean you can do that when you're not. When you're back at work, though, it does mean that you can no longer save that. So.
$2.5 trillion in excess savings during the pandemic. And to the extent that people were spending money, it mostly wasn't on services like flights or hotels or restaurants. Instead, it went to goods like furniture, appliances, or, I don't know, some steamy watercolour rat erotica. I'm just describing what most people did in 2020.
I couldn't afford that.
And what's more, the notion that our economy would be fine if not for Biden's stimulus completely ignores what it would have looked like without it.
Yeah.
So it not only protected low-income workers who were in real trouble, it also helped us avoid a COVID-induced financial crisis. And
yeah.
With hindsight, most economists would say that we could have made it more targeted and precise so that we didn't increase the money supply any more than we absolutely had to.
Well, the problem was the same thing as they did in England, and I believe in my country too. They gave a ton of money to the rich as well, which is never a good idea because giving money to people who don't need it. And when I say don't need it, I do mean like really don't need it. Like don't need it, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it, don't need it. Like, they can literally buy. They already have your entire package in their bank, you know. Then, you know, it's not a great idea. Let's say put a cap on everyone who earns over $2 million a year.
Very important to note that according to one estimate, without the American Rescue Plan, the economy would have come close to suffering a double-digit recession in the spring of 2021. So two things are likely true here. The government stimulus did contribute to inflation, but it was also a necessary intervention. And the much bigger point is, inflation clearly isn't just about the stimulus at all. After all, it's not just a problem here in the US. Britain and Germany have seen inflation rates hit 4-decade highs, and in 7 Eastern European nations is now expected to surge past double digits. And in Japan, it's particularly dramatic consequences.
We're at an aquarium in Hakone. The effects of inflation can be felt here too. With the rising price of feed, they've chosen to use the cheaper mackerel. How are the penguins reacting to the new feed?
Nah.
She tries to coax it to eat.
Nah. I'll just starve you to death.
The penguin doesn't like it.
No, it does not, and I do not blame it. I love absolutely everything about that. My new favourite genre of news segment is now footage of what appears to be a large flightless bird being a massive bitch, which, now that I say it out loud, would be a pretty accurate title for the show. But also remember, demand is only one side of this equation. The other side is supply. And to quote my therapist, let's come back to that frog spreading its legs statue, because in that scenario where everyone won the lottery, if there happened to be enough frog statues for everyone to buy, then there wouldn't be any imbalance between supply and demand, and prices would remain stable. But
see, this idea though is that it's like you're accepting the allowance of greed. That is greed, John. There are 3 statues in existence. They have been made. There is no increase in cost for those statues. And the point is, even if there was, you'd only put that cost on, not just the fact that, oh, there's suddenly millions on the bank here. Let's increase the price to millions. No, of course, John. You keep the price at that price because that's how much it fucking costs you. You know? This idea that it's not greed, that is greed. If the price goes up because the supply, because the demand is gone up, yeah, it's greed to increase the price. That's what it is. You're increasing your profit margin. That's what you're doing, John. That is greed.
Remember, there are only 3 giant statues left in stock, and if for whatever reason they can't make any more, the price of the remaining statues will then go up, especially...
Once again, that is down to greed, John. The price of production doesn't go up just because you can't make any more, okay? The price of production is already paid for. And unless you were originally selling the statues at a loss, there is no reason to increase the price except for greedy purposes.
Because there aren't actually 3 of them left anymore, because I have one and it's right over here. Look at it. Look at my beautiful frog statue.
Wait, is the statue and the thing?
Actually, what that means is there are now only 2 of the frog statues left. Except, to be honest, there aren't 2 because I have another one as well that is right over there. Look at my second frog statue. What an absolutely perfect pair.
Yeah.
And what that means is that the last remaining frog statue is going to be worth an absolute fortune, which, to be honest, is very good news for me because I did get that one as well. Here it is. I'm rich. I've got all the frogs.
Yeah, well...
Statue market. I am good at business. But look, the larger macroeconomic point that I'm making is demand is certainly a factor, but a smaller supply also leads to inflation.
Yeah, but the issue people miss all the time is not putting that down to greed, which is if supply, right, is there, then if you alright, are selling products, right? And you're able to make make the money off the product. There's no loss making there. So why would you increase the price? Oh, basically your attitude is because you can, because people are willing to pay that price. So that's just greed then. Like, if I'm selling heart medication, and I own all heart medication, and if people don't take this heart medication, they will die painfully. Not only is it greedy, but it's also evil. But the thing is, it is greed that will drive me to go, oh, you have our money, I see. Give that to me or you die! That's basically what you're saying. Give that to me. Give that money to me that you have. Because I know you have it. So, give it to me. I want the money. That's what you're saying. I want the money. So, that is greed. Just is. So let's just be honest about that.
We've had diminished and disrupted supplies of a lot of consumer goods, primarily because, thanks to COVID, factories overseas have been shut or have slowed down considerably. Take, for instance, bicycles. There has been a massive bike shortage over the last couple of years, thanks in large part to lockdowns and slowdowns disrupting bike production in China, where roughly 90% of all bikes sold in the US are produced, while demand for bikes soared as shoppers tried to stay active during lockdowns, meaning that just a few months into the pandemic, we were already seeing stories like this.
Bike shops across the country now seeing skyrocketing demand and supplies dwindling. In Albuquerque, New Mexico.
This is actually the only one we have right at the moment.
And in New York City.
Have you ever seen a bike shortage like this before?
No, never. I'm selling way more pink and purple to guys because they're just like, whatever, doesn't matter what color it is. It is what it is. It's a bike.
Good. Break stereotypes.
The bike shortage even broke down gender stereotypes.
Good.
But interestingly, while pink and purple bikes attracted a new male demographic, penny farthing bikes maintained their traditional customer base, fancy mustachioed perverts. All of which helps explain why. Last year, the average retail price of bike products was up 43% compared to 2019, which means...
Once again, greed.
Essentially one thing. If you are the sort of person who stayed active and exercised during lockdown, inflation is your fault and you're a terrible, terrible person. The point is, inflation truly was a perfect
I didn't buy any bikes.
and it seems like everything that's happened since then has only made it worse. When Biden said inflation is largely the fault of Putin, that is clearly not true. Inflation was happening before Putin even invaded Ukraine, so that's just not how time works. What is true, though, is that Putin definitely exacerbated the problem. The invasion of Ukraine greatly impacted food and fuel prices as the world cut off...
The thing is, right, you do know Russia is a large exporter of fuel, meaning they control fuel prices. Because imagine if Google announced that for every new phone that had Android, they would be charging 200 quid for every single phone. Now, that would shove up the price of almost every single phone, in necessity almost, because, well, phones, there are certain phones that are below 200 quid in price. They're gonna need to go up in price, because otherwise there'll be a loss. So that's sort of the point, Like, obviously, that wouldn't be an increase in actual cost, though. That's just man-made sort of greed on Google's part. You know what I mean? So if Russia increased the price of fuel, because they want to, then other fuel providers are going to go, oh, nice. Us too. Yeah, we're open up us too, yeah.
Its oil purchases from Russia, driving gas prices, which were already rising, up to outrageous levels, perhaps best summed up by this guy.
Bruh, I just got a brand new I just got a new car, my first car. Now I see what you motherfuckers are talking about with these gas prices. My shit was on empty. I put $20 in the fucking tank. Look at this shit. What the fuck? This is what $20 fucking gets me?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah. If I had to bet, I'd say 80%
Ban TikTok.
of a gas station employee's job right now is to talk people down from exactly this situation. The other 20% is, as always, tracking down some of the bluest drinks you've ever seen. Now, is it a good idea to sell those in the same store where you sell antifreeze? Not for me to say. So, Putin invading Ukraine didn't start this inflationary cycle, but it is making it worse. And the same can be said of corporate greed. It is absolutely true that some companies are taking advantage of this environment to drive up prices, and they're getting record profits in return. And that is
In necessity, you have to ask yourself, how do costs go up? What went up first? Fuel? Yeah. Well, as far as I can see, there's never been a drop in profits for fuel companies. So, fuck them. Tell them to take a price cut. You know, and when I say drop in profits, I mean drop in profit increases. Like they've seen profit increase every single time. It's never even stagnated. So, you know. Basically, at the end of the day, when looking at it, you have to say greed is kind of the cause. Now, whether it's greed from particular companies, that's different, you know. We're talking about like where did the first cost increases come from? That's generally not greed.
infuriating. But most economists will tell you that's not what caused inflation in the first place. After all, it's not like corporations only just...
Most economists are kind of slightly stupid, you'll notice. Because they kind of have to, you know, sort of take their actual beliefs around the economy and their basic economic intelligence that pretty much any human being with basic economic knowledge, like myself, can tell you. You know, like I studied economics for 3 years. You know. It's not exactly, you know, it's certain thing you'll notice, some economists are talking nonsense.
...got greedy in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Companies will shamelessly profiteer the exact same way that a dog will make an absolute meal out of its own ball sack.
Yeah.
Left to its own devices, that's unfortunately just what it's...
But see, John, the thing is that, the funny story is this. Imagine if you are a company that's selling a product and you can't really depend on customers to keep buying your product. You're not a fuel provider who, you know, knows everyone needs fuel. You're not that. No. You're someone who is selling a luxury good, effectively. It's not a luxury. It's not, like, expensive or anything. It's a good people can do without. So, the question you have to ask yourself is, how exactly can you make sure customers still buy your product if, you know, if you put the price like that? How do you stop them from getting angry? Oh, wait. Yeah, blame the government, blame inflation. Inflation, guys. Inflation, yeah. Oh, costs go up. Ignore the fact that costs are, you know, lower than what I'm putting it up by. You know, just ignore that.
It's going to do. So, to recap, rising prices are due to a ton of factors. A pandemic, a stimulus, changed spending patterns, supply chain issues, the war in Ukraine, to name just a few. And anyone loudly saying that one thing is the cause of inflation is either lying or has absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
Except John, and this is the problem with people saying, oh, yeah, but the thing is, right, any economist with basic intelligence can tell you this. or anyone with even basic historical intelligence can hear this. Imagine that you are a person, and imagine that this is your product. So you've got your product here, and pretend that this is this product, and it's a product that makes a sound. See, this is your product. Now the thing is that, let's say the product to make this, let's say this is plastic, and the cost of plastic goes up by 10%. Okay, so the price of plastic goes up by 10%, and this company makes this product along with all the other companies. So you know what? Let's put our price up by 15%. And they do. And what that does is that sends a message to the markets. The price has gone up by 15%. Okay, so let's make sure we now put up our prices up by a little bit more, because we also want to make a bit of money. So we're going to put our prices up by 20%. And then what that basically keeps going around and 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 around all the time, so that inevitably people are like, okay, but why don't we put our prices up? That kind of thing. So it is, at the end of the day, kind of greed, but also other factors. The point is, it's not, other factors didn't affect it at all. It's what actually was the decision to increase the price. The thing is, Russia invaded Ukraine, right? But they also increased the cost of their fuel. They put the price up. You know? Was that down to them invading? Or is the invasion an excuse? Or is that just them being like, oh no, we want to put our prices up? You know. Place sanctions on them. That kind of thing.
And the fact is, whichever combination of things got us into this mess, the entity that many are looking to get us out of it is the Federal Reserve. One of its key duties is to keep an eye out for things that can destabilise the economy, like inflation, and control it by raising and lowering interest rates. Very basically, the Fed can increase how much it costs for banks to borrow money, a cost that they then pass along to businesses and consumers through higher rates on things like mortgages and credit cards. And higher the interest rates, the less inclined people and businesses will be to borrow, and the more inclined they'll be to save. Essentially.
Except the point people always miss with this is that there are essential things, okay? Do you want every single person in your entire country to die in the cold because there's no fucking heating? Do you want that? Because you cannot tell people, oh, don't go out and buy that thing. Save. When at the end of the day, they need to bloody spend money on lighting and heating. They need to spend money on food. If costs go up and prices go up for, discretionary spending, they'll also go up for food, for heating. Don't fucking tell people, oh, save. Guess what? Certain things you have to spend money on. And sometimes you keep putting that up, guess what? People begin to die. Because at the end of the day, you cannot tell people, oh yeah, save. Unless you put a price cap on food and energy.
The Fed can indirectly influence how much people are spending. So when it comes to the demand side of the economy, they have some real power here.
Once again, this is always misunderstanding the point. If you try and affect the demand when it comes to food and heating, guess what? The only way to reduce demand for lighting and heating and food is to cut people off, to let them freeze to death and let them starve to death. Sure, that'll decrease demand, but it'll also kill them. Big shocker. But decreasing demand in, eating and heating is not a great idea. It tends to do a lot of damage to people's existence.
And the fact is, in this current crisis, it did arguably take too long for the Fed to raise interest rates. That's something that its chairman, Jerome Powell, basically admitted at a congressional hearing in March. Just listen to him explain that the Fed initially saw early signs of inflation as being due to a temporary supply shock that would simply resolve itself.
What the textbook says is the shock's going to come and it's going to go. And
Except you missed the point. And this, once again, is like any economist can tell you. Any economist who understands basic greed can tell you, if prices must go up because there's a temporary supply shortage, prices will stay the same. Prices don't tend to go down. The only time prices go down are in flash sales. In times in which a business is like, okay, let's, see how much our product sells now when we drop the price. Oh, okay. Of course, the problem is sale periods tend to be a little more complicated because you can't really put something on indefinite sales. And if you say a sale must end, you can't just you can't just end a sale and then start another one, So you do have to have periods in which the price has to go back to the ordinary level. So the only way to really drop the price permanently is to drop the price permanently and no longer call it a sale, So inherently, this is the thing.
and you shouldn't react to it. Hindsight says we should have moved earlier, and then
Yeah.
it turned out to be wrong. Not maybe conceptually wrong, but it's just taking so much longer for the supply side to heal than we thought.
Yeah, he's right. The standard textbook of economics says that if there is a supply shock, you let it...
Who wrote the standard textbook, though? Ask yourself that. Because inherently, the problem with economics is that it always misses the point. You need a fresh economic perspective. You need an economic perspective that ignores the fact that, yes, some economic policies will hurt businesses, will hurt megacorps. America's never going to adopt a policy that's actually good for its citizens if it's bad for its multinationals.
Resolve itself organically. Unfortunately, and in fairness to the Fed, the pandemic was totally unprecedented, so the standard textbook just didn't apply. In fact, the only textbook applicable to this situation was, oh, fuck, 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 the whole world shut down. What do we do? Oh, God, oh, fuck, fuck, fuck. And it is not like the Fed was alone in calling this wrong. Most economists thought inflation would go away on its own, and some of the loudest voices on Wall Street were arguing against the Fed raising interest rates because they thought inflation would be transitory. For instance, here is Jim Cramer. The answer to the question, why a garbage can full of cocaine and business school pamphlets wish to be a real boy, making that very argument in November of last year.
There's a couple of
I don't think Powell needs to slam the brakes on the economy. Despite what you hear from the inflationistas and the media, the weight of the evidence is finally going Powell's way. Team Transitory is going to win.
The thing is, and once again, people misunderstand what greed is. And it's this. At the end of the day, greed is going to it's going to push your price up continuously. And it might stay there. Sometimes companies go, okay, we don't want to have a run on demand, so we're gonna ensure our price stays the same, and we're gonna squeeze our suppliers some more. We're gonna squeeze our workers some more. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. Of course, the problem with that, of course, is that if everyone squeezes the workers, then workers have less money, and they can't buy as much of products. This is why people operate. Like, very wealthy people buy shares and sort of essential services. So in services where you kind of can't really stop buying stuff, you just sort of have to go in debt. So yeah.
I say stop freaking about inflation.
Okay, setting aside the fact that he's speaking with an intensity level there, best described as Patti LuPone admonishing a rude audience member, it's pretty clear that this clip, much like Jim Cramer himself, has not aged very well because here he is 6 months later doing a full 180 with a very different tone.
I think that Powell may not understand. We got to break this. We got to break it now because this was the week where you realized that it is just inflamed and it is not going away. And I was just kind of Look, I was shocked. I just didn't know that it was as bad as it is. It's in every aisle. The inflation's in every aisle.
I remember writing a story before where this drugs company that like sells essential drugs, tries to threaten this government, and the government go, okay, and they send them off, and then the government tells the military to fire missiles into like different locations across the world at the drugs company's HQs, and the drugs company's HQs like all like burn down to the ground, and they're also like firemen sent off by the country to ensure no one else gets hurt. But the point is that they destabilize the entire business of that drugs company. Effectively speaking, what I'm trying to say there is like, big businesses are not going to help you out here. Not going to help you out at all.
Wow, that was a pretty dramatic turnaround. He went from loudly unconcerned about rising prices to full-blown inflationista in a matter of months. And quick question, what exactly is going on with this expression right here? That is not the face you make when you're concerned about inflation. That's the face you make when you're watching a giraffe give birth. The fact is, a lot of smart people, and Jim Cramer, read this situation wrong. And there isn't really a roadmap for what to do next. As one Wall Street Journal columnist has said, economic models that worked for decades broke down during the pandemic, and alternatives have yet...
The point is, guys, at the end of the day, trying to base economics around where you allow for corporate greed is always going to be a problem. I studied economics for 3 years, and the thing is, I'm not really a capitalist as such. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a socialist, but like I have looked at socialist stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself a socialist. But you know what I mean? Like it's this kind of thing where I think inherently I wouldn't call myself a socialist, but like still I don't think that having like far right economic policies is a good idea, and that's why those models broke down. Because they were far-right economic policies. And far-right economic policies don't really work because they fail to take into account, demand. You can't just expect demand to fall. Certain services demand can't fall without you murdering people. That's what you're doing, energy companies. You're murdering people. And you should go to prison for that.
To emerge. Now, one thing that would really help is if we knew the extent to which this is a supply or a demand problem. If it's more about too much money or not enough stuff. Because if it is too much money...
Well, to be honest, as far as I can tell, it's not too much money. Definitely not for me. I don't have too much money. That's my view on it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm an outlier. But, like, as far as I can see, it's more... a supply/manufactured supply issue. So as I said before, there's certain products that are being stockpiled right now. So obviously if they're being stockpiled, that means that they're not technically being sold, which means officially speaking the supply is down, but it's not really down.
The Fed can impact that pretty easily. What they want to do is raise interest rates significantly enough to curb spending and slow growth, but not so aggressively that it would then trigger a painful recession. But if it's about not enough stuff instead, if the major issues are things like supply chain disruptions, the effect the Fed can have is drastically reduced because the Fed can't stop the war in Ukraine or open factories that...
The thing, though, that you missed, John, is that there's only so much the Fed can do before they start killing people. Because you can only reduce demand by a certain amount before you realize that the demand is coming from a particular industry, essential services. And essential services, unlike other things, are a bit complicated because you try and reduce demand of them and, you're going to cause problems. That's why they're called essential services, because they're essential to life.
China that are closed due to COVID. I suppose Jerome Powell could lead an army of economists into Luhansk. But I'm not sure anyone wants to see that, and historically, that hasn't been the Fed's role. So the question of whether inflation is caused more by supply or demand basically determines how much influence the Fed has to improve things. Unfortunately, Even economists don't really agree on which is the bigger driver.
I think what would be very beneficial would be nationalization, but extreme nationalization. So, nationalizing energy companies, dropping the price. I think at this point, because of corporate greed, I know John doesn't like to say this because, bit of a disappointment that John doesn't like to say this, but you know what I mean? But corporate greed is part of it, is a significant part of it. Because of that, it means that you might have to see possible non-pay increases in order to reduce the price of things so significantly. You might have to see basically very similar price, like pay for working for a nationalized company as you would for a private company, which you generally wouldn't see. Generally, most of the time, nationalized companies pay more than privatized companies, because obviously private companies are inherent on profits, while nationalized companies are like, no, we just want to supply service. But anyway, I think that might be a good thing to do. Cover things like fuel, heating, lighting, food, all that. I think that would be very beneficial, because that would mean that people would be able to eat and live a lot cheaper than they can now. Yeah.
Here. Meaning the truth is, inflation may not be fully within our control right now, which isn't to say that
nationalize.
Biden hasn't been out there promising to combat it.
See, this is the problem, though. It's like America's never going to nationalize anything, or maybe the military. Like they've got a privatized prison service. Like, what the fuck is that about? What kind of an idiot thought it was a good idea to privatize prisons, where it's legal to have slaves? Just saying. Come on. This is the problem in America. Never understanding that, yes, some problems are down to capitalism. Some problems are down to this. At the end of the day, you should fucking nationalize stuff. That will give you a benefit. Oh my God. This is the problem, though, isn't it?
Showing empathy for Americans who are struggling, sometimes in the weirdest way possible.
I want every American to know that I'm taking inflation very seriously, and it's my top domestic priority. I know you got to be frustrated. I know. Taste it.
Never say that again. That may have been.
Oh God, that cheers me up.
The single grossest thing I've ever heard come out of Joe Biden's mouth, and that is saying a lot, because I've heard the stuff that he used to say in the 1970s. But to be fair, I get why Biden is taking this approach.
Wasn't he like the fellow who introduced like civil forfeiture or something like that? I'm not sure of this, but like maybe I think he was. So like he's not a great politician. Like he's fairly right wing. Like this is the funny thing. When you are disagreeing with Joe Biden, like when you're disagreeing on right wing points, like he's saying your right wing points are wrong. They're wrong because like this fella is right wing, like very right wing. So like trickle down economics. He's against trickle down economics, which is smart. Trickle down economics doesn't even make sense like mathematically. Like it doesn't make any sense. It's not even complex. It's like just doesn't make much sense anyway. Like just look at the waterfall. You fucking idiot.
Inflation as the top problem facing the US ahead of the midterm elections, ahead of every other calamity facing the country, including Ezra Miller. And there is an argument for trying to raise public confidence. Once an inflationary cycle starts, simply the expectation of it can keep inflation going.
Yeah.
For instance, as the cost of living rises, workers might demand higher wages to cover that, which in turn raises the cost of labour, leading businesses to charge higher prices, leading to still more inflation. It's basically a vicious
That is greed. Okay? That is greed. Do you understand? If the cost of living rises, it's not generally because of labour, it's generally because of either a generally smaller cost of, production, that leads to higher prices. That leads to cost of living, because higher prices, obviously then workers demand more. The cost of labor increases, not generally to meet how much the price has gone up. They go, no, it stops there. That collapses the amount. That then collapses the amount workers can buy. They then can't buy as much. The business goes, oh fuck, we have to increase the prices even more because our demand has fallen. In some cases, that can happen with essential services. The only problem with essential services where demand falls is when demand falls for essential services, as I've said like 5 times, that means people die of starvation and of freezing, or in some countries of heat exhaustion. So, well, they then put the prices up, and that kills more and more people if it's essential service, and it drives more people into poverty if it's not. So this is actually better because you can just say, you know what, fuck you, business. You will take a price cut. You will not increase your prices. You will just swallow the cost, and then that's fine. Because it's not good. If workers don't demand higher wages or aren't given higher wages, it's far worse. Because it's one thing for people to be driven into poverty. It's quite another for them to be driven into poverty and death.
That is why the worse our inflation expectations are, the worse
Also, it wouldn't even be poverty, because when you look at this, it would be rich businesses, Yeah? So, like, it wouldn't even be poverty. It would be less money for rich businesses. So just to correct myself there.
And that may help explain why the Fed, albeit late, is now taking some big steps. It recently enacted the biggest increase to interest rates since 1994, and it's all but certain that it will raise them again next week. Meanwhile, Jerome Powell has been trying to reassure people that the Fed has things under control, although he has also notably gone from talking about trying to engineer a soft landing for the economy to something slightly different.
So I would say there are a number of plausible paths to having a soft, or as I've said, soft-ish landing.
Soft-ish.
Oh, so we're aiming for a soft-ish landing now, are we, Jerome? The thing is, ish isn't exactly the most reassuring suffix to hear when you're discussing something so serious. There is a huge difference between a surgeon telling you the surgery went well and it went well-ish.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know where things are going to go from here exactly. I am not a monetary policy wonk, even though my clothing, glasses, haircut and general vibe would strongly beg to differ. Although, for what it's worth, there have been some small encouraging developments recently. Among other things, gas prices have been dropping, and long-term inflation expectations recently ticked down after the Fed's...
Have they now? Fuel up at over £2.
Intervention. Most economists now expect this wave of inflation to pass in a year or 18 months. That's an incredibly long time for those suffering the most. Because for all of our discussion tonight of...
I have to ask to those economists, have you tried eating? Like, rather not eating for 18 months? Tends to be a problem.
Supply and demand curves.
Also, actually, interestingly, what I would say, and I'm not encouraging this, but I'm saying is one of the only ways to eat when you can't afford it is to steal. So, expensive shops, that like major ones, take from them, that's a source of food. When you can't buy it, take it. Online when you can't buy it. If you can,
Really important to remember that inflation's effects are anything but abstract for those that it's hitting the hardest. Like this woman describing shopping with her kids.
They see it, like when I'm in line and I'm like, calculating in my head and looking at my groceries, right? Like literally, like I have my calculator out, like doing the tax and like, what is this gonna come to? And
in my country, the tax is supposed to be on the actual products, meaning you shouldn't need to calculate the tax. It is insane that a business is allowed to do that. Allowed to put the price on before tax. Because that's false advertising.
I'm putting things back as we get closer in line, you know. And my oldest daughter is like looking at me, and then like she's putting something back, and like it just breaks your heart a little bit.
Of course. Kids shouldn't have to worry about putting food back on the shelves because they can't afford it. Kids should do what they are meant to do at the grocery store, go over to the big bin of rubber balls that are inexplicably sold there and cause absolute mayhem. So the next year is likely to be very hard for a lot of people, which is why what we should definitely be doing right now is helping them. One of the best ways to help low-income families would be to pass a refundable child tax credit for those who need it. And I know that that might be hard, especially in an atmosphere where government spending is being blamed for fueling inflation, but it could be narrowly targeted while also...
No offense, if Fox News is against something, it's on 90% of the time a good thing. Not always, but a lot of the time.
Fully offset with higher taxes.
Oh, I should say, not necessarily a good thing, but it's not generally a completely bad thing. Because sometimes they're like, no, it's this bad. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a good thing, but it's your policy is not better either.
Earners. We could also expand rental.
Wait, what was that? Sorry.
Set with higher taxes on higher earners.
Yes, good idea. Now I know I talk about how many stories I've read in my life. I did write actually it wasn't. I don't believe this is a story. I wrote a website. I made a website for some reason. I don't know why. I had a very depressed life, and I wrote a website once about this like fictional like island that basically states you can have this level of wealth, whether that be in assets, whatever the case may be. This can be your net worth. Any money over that, the country will take. Not earnings, wealth. You have 25 million you can have. Anything over that, you have it taken off you.
It also expand rental assistance, something that economists say would have a minimal impact on driving inflation further up, while also keeping people in their homes. Look, things are obviously pretty bad right now. Families are struggling, penguins are pissed, and Jim Cramer looks like he just shit himself. And there is still a lot of uncertainty here, but there are also two things that we do know for sure. One, it's going to take a difficult combination of monetary policy, supply chain recovery, and time to bring supply and demand back into alignment. And two, that if everyone does win the lottery in the future and does suddenly want some frog statues, I just made the smartest investment of all time. I am the Warren Buffett of frogs.
Once again, John, what would happen if you didn't have that money to buy those frogs? Also, at the end of the day, those frogs, if you put up the price of those frogs, John, that is greed. You wanted more money, so you bought the frogs, and then you put up the price of those frogs. That is inherently the issue of capitalism, which is it requires a profit motive. If there was a profit motive, then yeah, that's greed. Jesus Christ. Anyway, basically, people oftentimes misunderstand inflation when it comes down to it. They don't understand greed. I don't know why, but it's weird, but they just don't really understand greed. Anyway, getting down to it, all I'll say is, do be aware, a lot of the time inflation is caused by greed, amongst other things, but greed is inherently the main underlying issue. Putin wants to invade Ukraine, and then puts up the price of fuel. Greed. Other fuel companies are like, oh, Russia's fuel prices have gone up. Okay, we'll put up prices up too. Greed. When you see North Sea gas increase in price, North Sea gas is what is where it's in the UK. That is nowhere near Russia. That's not going up because Russia's energy prices went up. That went up because they saw Russia and they went, we'll do it too. That is where your greed comes from. So yeah, apparently greed is a massive issue. And it's kind of the driving force behind a lot of other issues. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please do go ahead if you want to subscribe to Last Week's Night and view all the videos, all those kind of linkadoos should be in the description. Thank you for watching. Please do go ahead and subscribe and do all those other things, and hopefully you will come back next time when I look at other videos. See you then, I guess.